Good evening. So I'm making a video to show you about how we have taught counting money to our second graders. This is a really big concept on the test that students really need to understand. So what we have done is we've been teaching something called touch math, and this really focuses on counting by fives. So the first thing that you want to make sure is that whenever you are working with your kids, that they know how to count by fives. And we have noticed that whenever they reach 40 and up, is where they sometimes begin to mix up or they skip numbers. So maybe they'll go 35, 40, 50, 65. So just make sure that you're really reinforcing that, showing them that 120s chart, or just going through and practicing counting by fives with your child. So whenever we use touch math, we use something called dots. We're drawing dots underneath our money, and each dot equals 5. So basically what we're doing is we're drawing dots until we get to the value of the coin. So for example, a quarter would have 5 dots. We know that 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 equals a quarter, and whenever we draw a quarter on our test, we just draw a 25 and circle it instead of trying to draw the face on the quarter. The dime has 2 dots because we know that a dime is worth 10 cents. So whenever we count our dots, we get 5, 10 because we're skip counting by fives because each dot is 5. A nickel is 1 dot because a nickel is worth 5 cents. We draw our 5 and circle it. So that whenever we count with our nickel, we get 5. And a penny has 0 dots because it's only worth 1. So we actually don't count dots. What we would do is just start to count by 1. So if we were counting a quarter, a dime, a nickel, and a penny, we will put our finger on the dots and count. So we get 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Stop, and now we're going to count by ones. So 40, 41. So then we would get the answer of 41 cents. Now, one important thing to remember is whenever your child is writing their answer, they should be able to represent 41 cents using the cent sign, but they should also be able to represent that using the dollar sign. So it should be able to look both ways, and they should be able to identify both ways. So I'm just going to take you into 2 examples of how we expect children to show their work on the test. So whenever we're on the test is going to have pictures of the coins, just like on your study guide. It's not going to say Q, D, N, P. I just had to draw those out, and I'm not a good enough artist to actually draw you pictures of the coins. So they're going to be laid out. They could be facing heads, they could be on their tails, and the student has to be able to identify the coin based on the picture. And these will be in black and white, so they cannot focus on the fact that a penny is copper. They need to know what the pictures look like, how the sizes of the coins are different, and be able to identify what each of the coins are. They're also going to be laid out in a random order, and what we try to tell students is to start from the biggest and go down to the smallest. So whenever they're on their test, we expect them to show their work by redrawing the coins. So what we're going to start with is the biggest, which is the quarter, and whenever we draw a quarter, we draw 25 and we circle it because that helps us to remember that a quarter is worth 25 cents. Each time that I draw that coin, I'm going to cross one out so that I don't draw too many or I don't miss one. I do have one more quarter, so I'm going to draw myself another one. Cross it out. And then next, students should know that the next biggest coin in value is the dime. Even though the nickel's bigger than the dime in size, we know that the dime is bigger in value. So I'm going to draw my dime. I'm going to draw my other dime, which is not at all the same size as the first one that I drew. And then we know that the nickel comes next. It's worth 5 cents. And then we know that there's 2 pennies. They're each worth 1 cent. Now, what I tell my students is whenever you have them drawn from biggest in value to smallest, find those pennies and draw a big line so that we remember whenever we're counting that we need to stop here and start to count by ones. So now we're going to do our dots, and if we remember that each dot is 5, students know how to draw their dots right underneath the coin. So we're going to go down here and we're going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 10, 5, 10, 5, and we remember that the pennies do not need dots because they are just worth 1 cent. So now what students have to do is they have to go through. If your child's able to easily go 25, 50, 60, 70, 75, that's fine. The reason that we have this is because skip counting is still a very difficult concept for second graders, and by having them count just by fives, it's less confusing for them. So I would recommend that even if your child can do this, maybe have them check their answer by drawing the dots. So now we would go through and we would say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, Okay, I've reached my line. This is where I start to count by ones. So we're at 75, 76, 77 cents. Whenever we represent our answer, we should be able to say 77 cents or 77 cents. Both ways need to be able to be represented by the student. So I just came down here. I'm going to do one more example for you to see it one final time. So whenever we represent our coins, we represent in order of value from biggest to smallest. We're starting with the quarters. Every time that we draw one, we cross it out so that we don't draw more than we need to or less. In this case, I have 3/4, so I'm going to draw my 3/4. Next, we have 2 dimes. 1, 2, 10, 10, circle, circle. We have 1 nickel. And I ran out of space, so I'll draw my pennies down here. Okay, we have to now go through, and if we want to, we can check that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Usually if the students make a mistake, it's initially here at the beginning where they have to draw the coins. We're going to go through, we're going to add our dots. We remember that each dot equals 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 5, 10, 5, 10, 5. And then I'll draw my line over here to remind myself to come down here to count my pennies. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, $1. And then we have $1, $1, $2, $3. My mistake, students only need to know how to draw up to $1 for this test, or to count up to $1, but eventually by the end of the year they will need to know how to go by up to $2, and they should still know that it's 103 cents. We've done a couple examples in class like this, but at home, if you're working, don't worry about going over $1. Just keep yourself to solely $1. And students should know we have a little riddle whenever we count our quarters. We just go 25, 50, 75, $1, 25, 50. So students should be able to talk to you about that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. But this is what I want your students to know for their test. Have a great day.